Good day and welcome to today's devotional. I hope you're having a good day. We're looking at Proverbs chapter 8 verse 30 today. And as we go down through chapter 8, we find this discussion that that wisdom is having with us, and as if wisdom was a person, right? Personification of wisdom. And she's presented as a woman calling out to us and showing us the value of us having a relationship with wisdom. And so that's what's been going on. And she's talking in these last few verses about how God himself created everything through wisdom, with wisdom. That wisdom isn't a person. This is a personification to make a point, but the idea is that God himself is wise, and it is through wisdom that everything was created, all the things. And each verse we've sort of explored different aspects of how that is the case. And as we get here to verse 30, we get these words. Then it says, "Then I was beside him, God." Right, wisdom was beside him, God. Uh, then I was beside him as a master workman, and I was daily his delight, rejoicing always before him. And so it gives us an expression here of sort of two things, right? The idea of the master workman, and then the delight and rejoicing part. And it's interesting to me because I think this, to me, I kind of see this sort of a nod toward two things we often hold as opposites, and that is the sort of the emotional artistic side, and the more calculated scientific side, right? The master workman and the delight and the rejoicing of the work. And often those are kind of thought in, as if in different ways. So there's this myth in our world, for instance, this myth that somehow theology, the study of God, and science, the study of the created stuff, that somehow they're in opposition to each other. That they're like unrelated or distant from each other in some way, which is just, I say it's a myth. It's just not true. I mean, in the ancient or in the medieval world, at least, they called theology the queen of sciences. That through the study of God Himself, we better understood the created order. And I think this kind of verse emphasizes that idea that when we realize that the created order was created with the wisdom of God and through the nature of God, and that there's an orderliness to it because God Himself is orderly, then it actually helps us understand the created world better. It's very difficult to think way some atheistic scientists think that the world, just sort of happened. It just kind of like chaotically became ordered. There's this part of science they call chaos theory. I mean, the layman often, I think, misunderstands chaos theory. I'm a layman, but I think we often uh, misunderstand chaos theory because we think of chaos theory as this idea that everything is chaotic. But I think, as I understand what chaos theory is this idea that everything looks chaotic in a sense, but isn't actually. That everything is deterministic, dependent on the initial conditions of things, and that there's a cause and effect chain that we may not always be able to see, but there's order even in the things that look chaotic. There's still order. And this is what science says, and I would say that makes sense because God is orderly, and everything He created is about bringing from the state of disorder to the state of order. And that was the act of creation. It wasn't luck; it was design. It wasn't happenstance; it was deliberate direction. And so this idea that somehow they don't go together. This verse is saying, there's a workmanship, a master workmanship to this, but there's also that delight and the rejoicing and the pleasure of perhaps the art of it, you might say. And you can see that God had uh, took pleasure in the organization of creation. It's an awesome thing. I think the other angle that I want to kind of point out here today is that it gives us a sense of what God loves. Like when we think, well, what are the things God loves, and how do we understand beauty? Like, God looking at something and thinking this is good, not in the sense of morally good, just simply pleasurably nice to look at, right? Like this is a beautiful thing. And this kind of a statement, or the statements we've been reading here in Proverbs, they seem to indicate that God loves wisdom. God delights in wisdom daily. Right? The idea of the days of creation. Each day, he was creating and liking it. This is good, God said. And the next day, he created, and he said, "This is good." And the next day, he created, "This is good." And there was a delight in the wisdom of creation, the orderliness of creation, the structure and purpose in each created thing. Each molecule was created with orderly purpose to it. And the universe and all the components, all the things that are made of the base things, the elements, they construct the physical world we know, and it's cool. It all works, and God finds that delightful, rejoicing in it, liking the wisdom of it, liking the order of it. I think when we think, well, what does God find beautiful? I think, well, he finds structure and order and wisdom and even morality, right? The morality of wisdom. He finds it beautiful. And I think that's something to think about. I'm not a big fan of some of the stuff that people today are calling art. I don't think it's very beautiful. But I think that God finds this kind of thing beautiful, and I think I do too. Anyway, something for you to think about today. Have a good rest of your day. We'll see you next time for verse 31. Take care.